I am ranking the main characters of the top 30 most popular anime from my anime list, but based on aura. Thorfinn is probably one of the most interesting cases on this entire list because his aura isn't really about being the strongest guy in the room. In Season 1, he's basically consumed by revenge. He's angry, reckless, and completely focused on killing Askeladd. But Season 2 completely changes his demeanor. After losing everything, Thorfinn becomes this incredibly quiet character who is forced to confront the kind of person he had become. This is what leads to the iconic "I have no enemies" moment, which shows significant character development. That line alone makes Thorfinn absolutely deserve A tier. Deku has some genuinely incredible moments, like how he goes completely feral against Muscular, and especially during his darker vigilante phase, you can see the potential for some serious aura. The problem is consistency. Deku spends a huge portion of the story being nervous, emotional, and constantly looking for reassurance, and that's not necessarily bad character writing, it actually makes sense for who he is, but it doesn't help his aura. His dark Deku phase is probably the closest he gets to A tier presence, but overall, too many highs and lows. C tier. Gon is interesting because most of the time, his aura comes from his personality rather than intimidation. He's energetic, curious, and incredibly stubborn. But then the Chimera Ant arc happens, and suddenly we see what Gon looks like when that innocent personality completely breaks down. His transformation against Pitou is probably one of the biggest aura spikes on this entire list. But we are judging the character as a whole, and most of the time Gon's just a chill dude. So I'd say B tier overall, with a few individual moments that are easily S tier. Lelouch is basically the perfect example of commanding aura. He doesn't need to be physically intimidating because his weapon is his mind. He is a master manipulator and a charismatic leader. And then there's Zero. The mask, the cape, the speeches, the dramatic entrances. This guy defines aura. He is always willing to make enormous sacrifices for his goal. Lelouch isn't just playing a game. He's willing to put his entire life on the board. S tier, no debate. Meliodas has the ingredients for S tier aura. Ridiculous strength? Check. Trademark look? Check. Cocky personality? Check. His demon mark moments and the reveals surrounding his true power definitely give him some serious aura. The problem is that the tone of Seven Deadly Sins can be all over the place. One moment Meliodas is being treated like an ancient, terrifying warrior, and the next he's comedic relief. B tier. Shinra has the devilish smile, the flames coming off his feet, the speed, the sound design, and everything about his fighting style is designed to look cool. There are moments where the goofy smile disappears and Shinra gets completely serious and the aura really kicks in. He also gets ridiculously powerful as the story progresses. He's usually loud, he's energetic, and he's definitely not subtle. But when Shinra locks in, huge aura. A tier. Joseph Joestar is an interesting one, because his charisma is S tier. This guy beat the Pillarmen with just Harmon and a bit of tomfoolery. He's confident, clever, unpredictable, and incredibly entertaining. Joseph always finds a way out of the most dire situations by some ridiculous way, but his aura is more chaotic and charismatic than intimidating, so I'm keeping him at B tier. Saitama's aura is almost entirely built around how absurdly casual he is. This man does not care, and that's the entire appeal. The best example is the Boros fight. The scale of the battle is enormous. Boros is throwing everything he has at him, and Saitama is still basically treating the entire thing like an inconvenience. His lack of reaction is the aura. I'm keeping him in A because his comedy intentionally undercuts the intimidation factor. But when Saitama actually gets serious, that aura shoots straight through the roof. Rudius is not a character who is supposed to have aura as such. His growth is the more important part of his character. He gradually becomes more capable, more responsible, and more willing to face the consequences of his actions. But he's written with a lot of perverted and inappropriate behavior, especially early in the story, which makes it difficult to rank him high. Not to mention the whole erectile dysfunction era, which made him seem kinda pathetic even. There are definitely moments where his magical abilities and his experience shine, but overall D tier. Eren might have one of the biggest aura transformations on this entire list. Early Eren is basically an angry kid screaming about killing titans. But after he learns the truth on touching Historia's hand, His expression changes. His personality changes. Even the way he speaks changes. Eren becomes this cold, ruthless, and menacing figure, and we can't ever tell what he's feeling. His founding Titan form just excludes aura. I know the scrying scene in the end makes him look kind of pathetic, but come on, this guy decimated almost all of humanity. Easy S tier. Mob is almost the opposite of most characters here. He doesn't want attention. He doesn't want power. He doesn't even really want to fight. And that's exactly why his biggest moments hit so hard. When Mob reaches 100%, especially when his emotions finally overwhelm him, the contrast between his normal personality and what he's capable of becomes incredibly powerful. The problem is that we're judging his average aura, not his maximum. Most of the time, Mob is just a quiet, awkward kid trying to improve himself. And honestly, that's part of what makes him such a great character. B tier overall, S tier when he snaps. Luffy's aura comes from one thing above everything else: the hope he gives to everyone. He is a symbol of hope, and everywhere he goes, he liberates the people from the cruel shackles of oppression. Luffy will get up and fight even when the enemy seems impossibly strong. And now, especially after Gear 5, Luffy himself is extremely powerful and a major threat. But obviously Luffy is usually a very light-hearted and fun-loving character who likes to joke around a lot, but hurt one of his nakama, and you will see why he is going to be the king of pirates. A tier. Senku proves that you don't need superpowers to have aura. The guy looks at the Stone Age and basically says, "Alright, let's rebuild civilization." Watching him recreate technology from scratch is genuinely impressive. The problem is that Senku's aura is almost entirely intellectual. He's not intimidating. He's not particularly physically imposing. And his biggest moments usually come from solving a problem rather than dominating an opponent. That's still cool, but compared with people like Lelouch or Light, who also use their intelligence as their primary weapon, Senku doesn't quite have the same dramatic presence. C tier. Light is proof that you don't need physical strength to have overwhelming aura. Light is extremely smart and will go to any means to achieve his goal. His entire character is built around a massive ego, god complex, and manipulation. He is a psychopath who believes what he is doing is justice. He forced the world's greatest detective, L, to come out of the shadows and challenge him directly. Albeit he had an unfair advantage. His master plan of abandoning ownership of the Death Note is just genius. I mean, this guy literally wants to be a god. That's aura. S tier. Hinata's aura is pure energy. He's tiny compared to most of the players around him, but he refuses to let that determine what he can accomplish. His growth throughout the series is what makes him so satisfying. Early Hinata is basically raw athletic ability and enthusiasm. Later Hinata becomes an actual complete volleyball player who understands positioning, timing, reading the court, and how to make himself useful even when he's not the star. His best moments are incredibly hype. But because we're comparing him to characters who can literally reshape the world around them, B tier feels right. Yeah, well, Kirito just seems kinda cringy at times. Kirito absolutely has cool moments. The dual-wielding reveal is iconic, his black coat is iconic, his reputation inside the game is iconic. But Kirito feels like a character who was specifically designed to be cool rather than a character who naturally generates cool moments. I just can't take him seriously anymore. So yeah, Kirito, you are going in F tier, buddy. Pack it up. Rimuru has some genuinely intimidating moments. When he gets serious, you can absolutely feel the difference between the friendly slime everyone knows and the extremely powerful ruler sitting underneath that personality. The problem is that Rimuru becomes so overwhelmingly powerful that tension can disappear. And when a character can solve almost every problem with another ridiculous ability, their presence can start feeling less impactful. He's still charismatic, powerful, and entertaining. But for me, that's B-tier aura rather than S-tier aura. Guts doesn't need an explanation. The guy has spent his entire life being thrown into situations that should have killed him, and his response is basically, "Fine, I'll keep going." The Dragon Slayer alone gives him an absurd visual presence. Then you add the armor, the scars, the expression, the soundtrack in the adaptations, and everything he's been through, and suddenly you have one of the most recognizable silhouettes in manga. But what really gives Guts his aura isn't the sword, it's his refusal to stay down. He gets beaten, he gets broken, he loses people, and somehow he keeps moving forward. S tier, easily. Yuji has some fantastic moments. His physical ability, Black Flash, his fights alongside Todo, and the way he gradually becomes more hardened all give him serious presence. But Yuji's biggest strength as a character is actually his humanity. He's constantly forced to deal with death, guilt, and consequences that he never wanted. And as the story progresses, you can see him becoming more serious without completely losing the person he was at the beginning. He's definitely grown into his aura, but compared to Gojo, Sukuna, or even some of the other protagonists here, Yuji's presence still feels more grounded. B tier. Subaru doesn't have the strongest body. He doesn't have some legendary sword. He doesn't walk into a battlefield and instantly destroy everyone. But that's exactly why his aura works differently. Subaru gets crushed, again and again and again. And every time, he has to find the courage to stand back up and try something different. Some of his biggest moments aren't flashy at all. They're moments where he's terrified, exhausted, completely broken, and still chooses to keep going. That's a different kind of strength. And honestly, that's S-tier aura. Kaneki might have one of the most recognizable transformations in modern anime. The white hair, the mask, the eye, the entire visual evolution of his character. And that's important because his physical transformation reflects his psychological transformation. He starts as someone completely unprepared for the world he's been thrown into. Then slowly, painfully, he becomes someone capable of surviving in it. His strongest aura moments come when the timid Kaneki we've known suddenly disappears and the much darker version takes over. A tier. Sora's an interesting case because, if we're ranking intelligence, he'd shoot way up this list. The guy can look at a seemingly impossible game and immediately start looking for the loophole. That's impressive. But aura's about more than being smart. A lot of Sora's presence comes from his confidence and his dynamic with Shiro, rather than the kind of overwhelming individual presence that characters like Light or Lelouch have. He's entertaining and clever, but when I put him next to the monsters on this list, D tier. Naruto's aura is built over hundreds of episodes. You watch this annoying, lonely kid who desperately wants recognition slowly become someone that an entire village looks up to. And that's what makes his biggest moments hit. When pain destroys the village and Naruto finally arrives. Aura. When he enters the battlefield during the Fourth Great Ninja War. Aura. When the same people who once looked down on him are now calling him their hero. That's the payoff. Naruto's aura isn't just about power. It's about watching him earn the respect that he wanted so badly as a child. A tier. Asta can be exhausting. He's loud, he's constantly screaming. He has enough energy for about 17 people. But then he gets serious, and you remember why he's here. A guy born with absolutely no magic, in a world where magic is everything, somehow becomes one of the most dangerous fighters around, through nothing but determination, physical training, and anti-magic. And his transformations, swords, and devil union moments give him some serious visual presence. He may not always be subtle, but aura doesn't have to be subtle. A tier. Edward is one of the most complete protagonists here. His character development is excellent. His relationship with Alphonse is the emotional heart of the series, and his determination never feels fake. But Ed's aura is deliberately grounded. He's a stubborn teenager who's trying to fix the consequences of his own mistakes while protecting the people he loves. And honestly, that makes his biggest moments more meaningful. He's got plenty of aura, just not the overwhelming kind. B tier. This character was practically engineered in a laboratory to produce aura. You start with Jin-Woo as the weakest hunter imaginable. He's constantly getting mocked, underestimated, and treated like dead weight. Then the system appears. And from that point onward, you're basically watching the slow construction of one of the most intimidating protagonists in modern action anime. The black coat, the shadows, the army behind him, the way his enemies slowly realize who they're dealing with, and that moment when he simply raises his hand and the entire battlefield changes. That's exactly what S-tier aura is supposed to look like. At first glance, Okabe might seem like one of the least intimidating characters here. He's loud, theatrical, and he's constantly calling himself Hahonin Kiyoma! But that's actually what makes his later development so effective. As the story progresses and Okabe experiences more and more tragedy, that goofy persona starts to crack. And when you finally see how much he's carrying underneath the comedy, his presence completely changes. His aura isn't physical, it's emotional. He's someone who has seen things nobody else remembers and still chooses to keep going. B tier. Tanjiro is an incredibly likable protagonist, and the animation gives him some absolutely spectacular moments. The Hino Kami Kagura scenes? Beautiful. The sword choreography? Insane. But we're specifically talking about aura, and Tanjiro's defining trait is actually his kindness. Even against enemies he's supposed to hate, he often shows compassion. That's a great character trait, but it doesn't necessarily translate into the intimidating presence that we're rewarding with the higher tiers. He's definitely got his moments, but compared to the monsters above him, C tier. Jonathan Joestar is a true gentleman, in a world where almost everyone around him is trying to destroy him. Even after everything Dio does to him, Jonathan maintains this incredible sense of dignity and determination. And the final confrontation between Jonathan and Dio is basically the foundation for the entire JoJo legacy. Jonathan might not have the most complicated personality on this list, but sometimes aura is about presence and legacy, and Jonathan has both. A tier. And that's the full list. 30 protagonists, 6 tiers, and absolutely no shortage of controversial takes. So let me know where you think I got it completely wrong. Who deserves S tier? Who did I disrespect? And most importantly, does Kirito really deserve F? Let me know in the comments.